This is going to be the first lecture of many talking about plotting with ggplot2, a package we've downloaded in order to make it easier for us to make some really nice graphs. So we'll be making a whole bunch of different types of graphs and manipulating them and changing their elements. And I've just typed out a couple of the things that we're going to be seeing and you'll be getting very familiar with. So these are the different types of graphs as they're named in ggplot2 that we're going to be looking at. For all of these, we're going to need to load the ggplot2 library before we start. And we're also going to load the hist data package, which is all those data frames that we want to use as examples. Okay, the first thing we'll be talking about is a scatter plot in ggplot2. And we already learned how to make a scatter plot with just the normal R graphics package, but as you'll see as we're doing this, it's a lot easier and the syntax is a lot clearer in ggplot2. So what we're going to be using to make a scatter plot is geom_point. And the first thing we're going to do is pull up the names of the prostitutes data frame so we can see the spelling of all the columns. And I'm going to walk through the syntax of this line. This is the most basic scatter plot that we can make. So I'm going to put this on one line just for simplicity. So in ggplot, you're going to call up ggplot, and in parentheses, you're going to put the name of your data frame, comma, and then this stands for aesthetics. So you're going to say what you want on your x-axis, which column, what you want on your y-axis, and if you want to change the color. So actually, we're going to take this out for a second and just do this because that's the most basic. And then this part of the data just tells you what the data is that you want. And then to tell ggplot what kind of graph you want, you're going to have an add-on here. So this is all within the ggplot parentheses. And then you're going to say plus geom_point. And that's telling R that you want a scatter plot. And now's where we're going to start seeing errors with parentheses because, as you can see, you've got two parentheses here. It can be a little difficult to keep track of them. But what's nice is if you mouse next to a parenthesis, the other one is highlighted. So I can see that this one is closed there and this one is closed there. And that's handy when you've got a long line and a bunch of parentheses and you can't really see where one starts and one ends. So if I run this line of code, it's going to make a very, very basic scatter plot. But as you can see, this is already a nicer graph than the R graphics package could make. It's got a grid in the background, it's a little darker, it's just a little prettier. So now we're going to talk about how to change these things. So I took out color before, I'm going to add color back in. So in this graph, we've got each year and you've just got a straight line of points. And each of these points is a different month because, well, let's go look at the prostitutes data frame just to get an idea of what it looks like. So we've got the year column, which is on the x-axis. Then you've got 12 points per year, which is one for each month. We've got the count, which is on the y-axis. Mon stands for the number of the months, so January is 1, February is 2, etc. And then the exact date that the survey was taken on. So say we want to differentiate between each of these 12 dots in each year. What we can do is we can add within here x equals year, y equals count, and color equals month. So that means it's going to have a different color for every month. If I run this, it also creates a legend here saying which color goes with which month. So now it's very nice and pretty. It's got different colors for each month. That's very nice. But the problem we see here is if we look at the months here, they're in a strange order. And what it's done is it's gone alphabetically, but that's not really useful for months. Let's say we want it to be in chronological order. We want January at the top and December at the bottom. So let's see how we can go and change that. So to do this, we have to actually go back to the prostitutes data frame itself and reorder the levels within it. So what it's automatically done is it's categorized it alphabetically and it said, all right, well, you didn't tell me in order, so I'm just going to say alphabetically. It just defaulted to that, but we want to change that. The month column is full of factors. So the difference between a value and a factor is that when it sees January repeated a whole bunch of times, it doesn't count each of those as an occurrence. It says, okay, there are a bunch of Januaries and a bunch of Februaries. Those are each factors. So we can say levels of prostitutes when month, and what it'll do is it'll give me the levels of this. So it doesn't give me every single instance where it says April, it recognizes that that's a category, basically. And it says, all right, that's one of the levels of this factor. And I just realized I've written it up here, but oh well, I typed it again. So what we have to do is we have to reorder the factors. Basically, revalue them so that January is the highest and December is the lowest. We do this by saying, all right, we're going to say prostitutes when it's the column month. And into that, we're going to say when prostitutes is month, the factor month has these levels. I'm going to say levels equal, and then you can type out whatever order you want them to be in, and the first one will have the highest value, and the last one will have the lowest value. So when we run this, it doesn't change the order of anything within the prostitutes data frame. All it does is it changes it so that January, if we go back to our graph, and we run it, now we can see that it's fixed it, and January is at the top, and December is at the bottom. And that's exactly what we want. Perfect. Now we've ordered that. So now that we've ordered it properly, we're done with changing the basic plot. So now what we're going to do is we're going to add a couple of stylistic elements, and that's the great part about ggplot. You have these add-ons like plus geom_point that change parts about the graph without having to go in and edit the actual data part. So what we can do is if we want to add on a whole bunch of things like geom_point, we can save the basic graph as its own variable. So if I run this, then it saves this basic plot into its own variable. So if I run this, then it just reprints that graph. So this will print out this basic graph. So we're going to then add some additions onto it. So if I say prostitute basic, I'm going to add on a Y label and an X label and a title. So if I were to run just this part, it's just going to change the label on the y-axis. See, it's changed it to number of prostitutes. And I can also add an x-axis label if I wanted to change that, even though I don't really need to because it just says year. But I've just changed it just to show you can do it. And then I'm going to add a title. And one more thing about the labels, if you have \n, it will make a new line. So I can then put \n if I want a subtitle in the title, and I can say prostitute population of Paris per month. And it doesn't matter if you put a space there or not, but I'll put a space so it looks nicer. So now I've got another line underneath the title. I'm going to take that out because it doesn't look that good. Now going from a scatter plot to a line plot is super easy. All you have to do is add on geom_line to your already existent scatter plot. So here I've done just that. I've added on geom_line. I've made the size be 2. That's the width of the line. I've changed the point a little bit. I've made it be size equals 4, and I wanted it to be yellow. In this code, I'm actually showing you another thing as well in addition to making a line graph. You can see here in the aesthetics section of the base code that I've added a shape equals part. And what that's saying is that all these points, which are normally the default of just a circle, are now going to be mapped to different months. So each month will have a different shape. And if I just left it like that, it would just assign automatic shapes to my graph. But what I've done here is I've added manual shapes to my graph. So the different shapes are coded to different numbers. So each of these represents a different shape. So if I didn't want it to just be like this, so it'll automatically default to just going 1 through 12 for each month. Since we've got 12 months, we have 12 shapes. But if I wanted to change this to say 1 and then shape 20 and then shape 3, shape 4, then I could do that by having the scale shape manual add-on. So if I run this, here's what this graph looks like. And I know this isn't really the best example because you wouldn't really want to do a different shape for each month. It gets really messy and you can't see what's going on. But I just did this to show you the possibility of it. So I'll show you it a little closer up. So you can see each color is a different month and each month has a different shape. And you can look up online what number applies to each shape in R, but you can also just play around with it. You can just enter numbers until you find a shape that you like. In this lecture, we've learned how to make a basic scatter plot, how to code colors to a variable, how to change the levels of a factor so that it shows up in the correct order, and then how to change various aesthetic elements of your graph. And finally, we learned how to make a line graph from a scatter plot, which is as simple as adding geom_line onto the end of your scatter plot code.